welcome back. I've got to get caught up on some tags. So today I'm going to be recording 2 tag videos. This first video is the book confessions tag, and I was tagged by Blake from Books with Blake. I'm going to put his original video down in the comments so you guys can go check out his channel. Make sure you subscribe while you're over there. I've written down the questions. I'm going to go through them really quickly. Number 1 is, what is an unpopular opinion or preference you have? One thing that I've been seeing a lot lately is people saying that Book Talk and BookTube and things like that are ruining reading, and I disagree. I don't think you can ruin reading in that way. Just like I don't think reading, romance or smut or anything like that is ruining reading. Some people are gonna like classical literature, some people are not. And I am of the mindset that reading is reading, and it doesn't matter what you're reading. I would much rather people be reading trash, whatever that you want to put into that category, rather than to not read because the classics are not relevant to them. I mean, we have to think that as time goes on, those books are getting older and older, and timelessness is maybe not something that's going to continue into the future, depending on how much the future changes, if that makes sense. I don't want to get too philosophical with it, but my stance as a teacher, as somebody who works with children and making sure that children become readers, one of the biggest problems we have in our society today is illiteracy. We talk a lot about illiteracy, not being able to read, but we don't talk as much about illiteracy, being able to read but not reading. And illiterate parents create illiterate children because they're not teaching their children the value of reading. Their children don't come to school already having the foundational skills that students who live in a household where reading is common have. And that first 5 years before your child even enters school is some of the most important time for their brain development. And reading to your child during that time is super important. So if the latest book talk sensation is getting people reading and modeling reading for their children, of course, I'm not saying to read that to your children, but you would be surprised how far it goes to a child's identity as a reader, knowing that their parent is a reader. That makes a big difference. And I am for any book, any format of book that gets people reading, because it is so important. I would argue that taking away the sensational books or the, let's just read what's popular books, if those are taken away and it decreases interest in reading, that I think would ruin reading more so than letting people read the latest, whatever it happens to be, even if you think that that's not quality literature. I think the only way that Book Talk or BookTube could ruin reading is if it made people not read. And that's my opinion about it. Anyways, to get off of that soapbox, number 2 is, have your reading taste changed over the years, and if so, how? Yes. My main genre that I typically read in is still fantasy. It has been fantasy since I was a young kid. Now I definitely read a lot broader. I read mystery, which I guess I did read mystery as a kid because I read Nancy Drew, but I read mystery, thriller, horror, I even read nonfiction now, and you would not catch me reading nonfiction as a child. Now I will read nonfiction. However, it's still not my favorite genre, and I definitely have to be in the mood for it. Number 3 is, what genre do you read to get out of a book slump? And I think it depends on what has me in the book slump. So, for example, if I have read a lot of really heavy fantasy, I would do like a palate cleanser, I guess you would say. So typically it would be a romance or a cozy mystery. And really and truly, I don't really have book slumps as in I don't want to read. I typically have life slumps, if that makes sense. Almost for a whole year, I read nothing but romance and cozy mystery, which is very unlike me. That was a really crazy year. But it was because I had so much stress and drama going on in my life that I wanted to read something that was predictable. I wanted to read something where none of the characters were gonna like die or something. I didn't want to have that anxiety that, you know, you have that in fantasy a lot, because fantasy writers will kill off your favorite characters with zero remorse, I'm telling you. So I wanted something that was very predictable and very cozy. And so I basically read nothing but romance and cozy mystery for that whole year. Yeah, I typically need a palate cleanser more so than I'm in a book slump. And I would say that those are the 2 genres that normally get me out of that. Number 4 is, what are some of your automatic buy authors? I think the only author I can really and truly say is an automatic buy author is Brandon Sanderson. And that is because I have read all of his Cosmere books so far. My son loves his middle grades series, the Alcatraz books. And when he published his picture book, we also pre-ordered that. So definitely he's an auto buy author because he writes so much stuff that, you know, all of the readers in my family really enjoy his writing. Number 5 is, how many chances will you give an author before you won't try them again? And I don't really know. I typically don't go into a book thinking about the author. I'm not looking at them, I'm looking at the book itself and what the book is supposed to be about. And even if I have read an author before and I didn't really like it, if the book sounds interesting, I'm still going to give it a try. And I don't know that there's a specific number of times that I would try a book by an author before I was like, oh, it sounds interesting, but I doubt it's going to be good because I've read all of these other things and, you know, now I don't want to try. I don't think I would necessarily base my decision off of the author themselves unless I had a reason not to read from that author, which would probably be they had done something that morally or ethically I didn't agree with. But in that case, that would kind of be a different situation anyways. Number 6 is, do you have anything that you like to do or listen to while you read? So while I'm physically reading, I'm pretty much going to tune out any kind of background noise. Sometimes just to have something going because I don't like it to be completely silent, which it's usually not around here because, by the way, can't you hear my washer and dryer in the background? It's very loud. I will put on like my comfort TV shows or comfort movies in the background. Usually some things that I've watched like a bunch of times that I'm not going to get sidetracked and want to watch it. When I'm listening to an audiobook though, I will put together a puzzle a lot. That's something that I like to do. Another thing that I do while I'm listening to audiobooks is chores. So like folding clothes, doing the dishes, things like that are just like menial tasks, cooking, stuff like that. I like to listen to an audiobook while I'm doing it because with my ADHD brain, I sometimes have trouble doing a task to completion, and I find that if I'm listening to an audiobook and I'm sticking to that kind of menial task, my focus is split just enough that I'll finish the task before moving on to something else. Also, it helps me to feel like I'm not wasting time that I could be reading by doing household things that absolutely 100% have to be done, and it makes me feel better when they're done. But sometimes I still feel like, well, I could be reading, so. Number 7 is, how far do you read before DNFing? And I don't think I have like a certain amount that I'm like, if I'm not invested by this point, I'm gonna quit. But if I DNF a book, it's gonna be very quickly, and sometimes it's so quickly that I don't even count it as a DNF, because I'm only reading a handful of pages, and in that handful of pages I'm gonna know like if I'm vibing with it or not. And typically it's not like, oh my god, this is awful, I'm DNFing it. It's typically like, I'm just not in the mood to read this right now. And so sometimes it's really a soft DNF because I'm not totally kicking it off of my radar. So there have only been a handful of times where I have read a significant way into the book and just finally had to just like quit. And typically that's going to be something where there are really significant errors. I'm not talking about just a little bit, because I know people that are publishing through Amazon's publishing platform. I know for a fact that creates mistakes. One of my friends has published a book through there, and she knows there's a mistake in there that she can't fix because the platform created the mistake. So I know that some of those little errors are probably, the publishing platform trying to do like an autocorrect situation. And of course, people, they're human beings that are, the ones editing this, and they make mistakes. I have had really amazing traditionally published books that I found a grammatical error, or something was misspelled, or whatever it happened to be. But if it is like constant grammatical errors, I cannot. I cannot. And so there has been a time or two where I've done that. I have not been reading as much indie published content lately. That year in question where I was just like reading all of the, happily ever after romances, there were a few that year. Definitely. But, it really just depends on the book itself. Number 8 is, do you ever find yourself making the same face as the characters in the book? I cannot think of a specific situation where I've done that or where I've caught myself doing that. However, I don't think it's like outside of the realm of possibility that I've done that before. I just can't remember a specific time that I have. So I guess that's gonna be a maybe. Number 9 is rereading, yes, no, or depends. I say yes 100%. And I've always been that way. I was constantly rereading my favorite books. Like, I was going to the library and checking out the same books that I knew I'd already read, but I didn't care. I just wanted to reread that book because I loved it so much. And still today, I think I'm more likely to reread now than I was back then, and partly for the same reason, partly because I do want to just live in those favorite stories again. Some constant rereads for me are Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, different things. I'm still rereading because I want to live in those worlds again. But also sometimes, especially books coming out in a series, I read so many books, and so many of the books that I read are similar because they're fantasy, and there's only so much out there. Sometimes the books get a little similar, the plot lines are a little similar, the magic systems can be a little similar, all of the things. So sometimes I'm rereading because I'm like, I don't remember what was happening in this particular book out of the 5 series I started last year. For example, the Plated Prisoners series. I have not read the last one yet because I know I need to reread the series, because the one before the last one, when it came out, like, I read it as soon as it came out, and I didn't think I needed to reread because I had just read that series about a year before the book came out. But what I found myself doing was kind of floundering a little bit in the beginning, trying to figure out who was who, because as that series goes on, it kind of splits off into multiple points of view. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't remember who this is, and I don't remember their story and what was going on. And I had to, like, it took me a little bit to, like, get back into the groove of the story because I couldn't remember who these people were. So I definitely reread series as new books come out. And then finally, 10 is to tag 10 people. Now, I'm probably not going to tag 10 people because I do have two tag videos to do. So I'm going to tag some people in this one, and I'm going to tag some people in the other one. But if you are a booktuber and you would like to do the book confessions tag, consider this your official tag. You're it. And let me know down in the comments that you're doing it, and I will edit my description to add your channel so that people can go check you out. So those tags will be down there. Go down there in the description, go to these channels and give them a subscribe, and I will see you in my next tag video, which I will be recording this afternoon, but I need books for that tag, so I got to go down to the old house and get them. So that will give me some motivation to actually do that, because I've been saying I would do it for a week now. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye.